By definition, a storyteller conveys events in words, images, and sounds, often by improvisation or embellishment. The Living Bread Radio Network presents The Storytellers with Tony Agnesi. Today you'll hear a faith-based, inspirational story that's both heartfelt and heartwarming. And now, let's meet today's storyteller with Tony Agnesi.
Hi, this is Tony Agnesi, and welcome to this edition of The Storytellers. This is episode number 14 of our third season. A couple of quick show notes. The Storytellers debuts live on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. on the Fiat Ministry Network on Facebook Live and YouTube, and at 6:15 p.m. at Tony Agnesi on my Facebook Live and YouTube pages. The radio program, which is in its third season, airs at 4 p.m. on the Living Bread Radio Network, and we are just honored to and happy to be back with the Living Bread Radio Network for another season. And for the second year here in my hometown, Wadsworth Community Radio airs the show at 10 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Sundays. I want to remind everyone listening of my new YouTube video series. It's called 5 Minutes with Tony, and it's on my YouTube page at Tony Agnesi. We post a new reflection every Monday and Thursday. And if you go to youtube.com/Tony Agnesi and subscribe, you won't miss a single one. Well, each week on the program, we feature an inspirational guest discussing not only their personal faith journey, but the ministries that they share as authors and speakers, bloggers, and radio and television hosts. Today's show, we feature Christina Chase. Christina is a blogger and an author of spiritual reflections, nonfiction, poetry. She has a wonderful website, authorchristinachase.com, where she shares many of those reflections. But today we're also going to talk about her new book, It's Good to Be Here, and it's published by Sophia Institute Press, a disabled woman's reflection on God in the flesh and the sacred wonder of being human. And Christina just reminded me that we met, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, at the Catholic Writers Guild convention, and it was wonderful that you mentioned that. That made my day. Christina, welcome to the Storytellers.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I wanted to really start by seeing if you might share your personal journey. You're obviously you're in a wheelchair, and your personal journey, not only physically and growing up into adulthood, but your faith journey as well. That would be something I think that would really help set the stage to talk about your book.
Sure, sort of a story of my body and story of my soul sort of thing.
Good way to put it.
Quickly with the body, I have a genetic progressive disease called spinal muscular atrophy. So I was a healthy looking baby, but then I started to, my legs were floppy. I never walked. My parents got the diagnosis when I was 2, and they were told that I would get progressively weaker. I would develop severe scoliosis, which is certainly true. My lungs would be compromised, which you can tell by my breathing, and that I probably would not live to be a teenager. That was a common prognosis back then. So they were pretty devastated. Didn't know that they could handle it, but they have, by the grace of God and with a lot of love. I've always known that I'm loved. And I was raised in the Catholic Church. My sister, I have an older sister. She and I went to CCD, on Saturday mornings. But we didn't really learn that much from our religious ed from the parish, kind of a watered down, version of the faith. And of course I was young. And I stopped going when I was about 9 or 10. Because it was physically demanding for me. And nobody really thought much about it. I'd made my first communion. I was a smiling, generally content little girl in a wheelchair. I was sure to go straight to heaven. What did I need to know about matters of faith? But I was and am a very curious person in more ways than one. I have a great curiosity and had a lot of questions I didn't really get a lot of answers. I got it's a mystery and things like that. And I thought, I need to know more. I need details. So when I was a teenager, and it really started my faith explorations after high school. I didn't go to college, again, for physical reasons. And I explored mythology, comparative mythology. To make a very long story short, I was briefly an atheist, not because of any anger or bitterness, because I really love life. Like I said, I've always known that I'm loved. I enjoy the extraordinary beauty of ordinary things, and I'm grateful for life. But I wanted to know the truth. I want to know what is real. I love reality. And, you hear so much out there in the world about religion being a myth, being a fairy tale. And I thought, is that true? I didn't want to believe in God out of fear, fear that I was going to die and I wanted the comfort of heaven, or fear that my little life was insignificant and I needed some story to make me feel better about myself, So I thought, well, I'm going to stop believing in God. And sadly, that was much easier than you might think it would be. And I had to get rid of all the little habits that I had, and became an atheist. But then, I was pretty happy because I could be as selfish as I wanted to be as an atheist. It was like all about me. I am the center of the universe. But then one day, I was sitting beneath a great arbor, very still and silent, and just listening to the sounds and kind of peeling back layers of sounds. I don't want to get into that story too much because it's very involved. But at one point, I became just suddenly aware of something beyond nothing, just of infinite presence. And try as I might after that, I just could not be an atheist anymore because I knew it wasn't true. I knew that, in St. Thomas Aquinas' words, which I did not know were his words at the time, the reality that everyone calls God is real. So from that point, what do you do with that knowledge, right? I couldn't do nothing when you know that there is infinite, eternal reality, a present, an uncreated creator. I needed to live in that fullness of reality somehow. But I thought Christianity was a dead question, so I didn't bother with that. But I did explore other religions in the world. It was about 7 years of searching until it was kind of like a shopping catalog, and I would go through all the religions, and if they didn't meet with what I knew to be true, one, God is real, one, all-powerful, and that, two, life is good, life is beautiful, life is not a punishment or an abstraction, it's real and good. So in the end, the only religion that was left was Christianity. So I thought, all right, I have to give it an honest try because what I want is the truth. And so just thinking about the incarnation, I had a kind of fear of the Lord, that God is God and I am not. And to think that God, this one infinite, eternal, uncreated creator, chose to become a limited creature, a human being like me and you. That blew my mind. I mean, it spoke about love in a more profound way than I really thought was possible. Anyway, I read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and the first part on the nature of belief, how we can come to know the reality of God in different ways. It spoke to me so deeply, and I knew that here was wisdom, was pure wisdom. And that led to my choosing Christ and his church and, believing in Jesus and giving myself wholly to the fullness of reality.
Did you ever, during that time period where you were doing the searching for the truth, did you ever think that maybe you had been shortchanged in some way, that, the problems that you've had, physically are kind of why me shortchanging?
Right. No, not in that sense. I wasn't even a jealous type of person. I didn't look at the other people and go, why can't I be like that? Because I have a pretty high self-esteem. Not exactly sure where that comes from. Maybe it's a gift from God. But I didn't want to be anybody else. I wanted to be me. But yet, I was so frustrated at times because I do get progressively weaker. So there were a lot of things I could do when I was a child that I couldn't do when I was a teenager, like hold a book and turn its pages, or write longhand. When I was 20, I started not being able to feed myself anymore, or brush my teeth, or hold my head up. And that was just maddening and frustrating and disappointing. And of course, I really wanted to have, I wanted to fall in love. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted very much to be a mother. And to know that that was never going to be, because of my severe disability and dependency. That was not a realistic life for me, and it wasn't going to happen. And that caused probably the most tears and frustration and sorrow in my life. I mean, it was, there were a couple of brutal years. Teenage years are rough anyway. But for me, just being so continually denied, I think they were harder in a way.
Was there ever any advantage because of your confinement that you have been more open to just the beauty of the ordinary, so to speak?
I think so, yes, because right from the beginning, babies crawl around and they explore things. So if they get bored with a toy, they either crawl or toddle off to find a new toy. But I couldn't do that. So I would have to use my imagination more. So when I got bored with coloring with my crayons, the crayons became little people, and I would play house with them. And I would, I couldn't always go and grab a book to read a story, so I would make up stories in my head. There'd be like a beautiful flowering crabapple tree, and I'd want to be able to, take hold of those blossoms and touch them and smell them. And I think that if I could have done that, I wouldn't have really appreciated or really had the desire to do it. But because I couldn't do it, I spent more time just gazing upon that tree and filling my senses with everything that I could about the tree. And, as I grew more, these experiences, I think, really broadened my imagination, but also my ability to just spend a long period of time gazing at a flower petal and not just looking at it on the surface, but really looking deep within to enjoy the fullness of its existence. You know what I mean? So it has been a gift in a way, in that being still, be still and know that I am God. Well, I think that works in the everyday as well.
It seems to me that your life is lived in the moment, kind of shedding the past and inhaling what is to come in the future. It's kind of a beautiful way to go about living your life. Well, I know you've been interested in writing, a long time. What prompted you to begin to write and blog and to share your thoughts and reflections online?
Yes, I have been writing since I was little, since I was a child, since I could write. But I have kept my writings to myself. I always wrote for me because it was a great way for me to process everything that I experienced, everything that I observed. And as I grew, it even became a way of, processing my spiritual searches as well, searchings. So I decided to write a blog, and that was at first to get me to write, just to not be lazy and to actually sit down and write. And then in 2013, I made a personal act of consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And I started a blog. I called it Divine Incarnate. It is still my blog, although now I call it authorchristinachase.com. And I decided that I would document the consecration and its effect on me and my, whatever insights that I may have gained through the consecration. And so that was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I always wanted to write a book because I love to write, but I just never did. It just never seemed the right book. I didn't know what to do. So in 2017, I had pneumonia. I was hospitalized with it. It was quite bad. And that was a good wake-up call when I came through it. That whole year was pretty rough for me medically. And the next year in 2018, actually it was a New Year's resolution that I would write a book, and I made it public on my blog so that my readers would hold me to it. I asked them, please bug me. Please keep asking me, how's the book going? Have you written anything lately? And they did, which was very kind. And so this book, It's Good to Be Here, came about through a collection of some of my blog posts that I adapted and rewrote a bit, and then new reflections focusing on this amazing reality of being alive, of being human, and how Christ, how God in the flesh, is fully divine and fully human, and shows us not only who he is as God, but who we are as human beings in his incarnation.
It's Good to Be Here is the book. It's published by Sophia Institute Press. And obviously when you write, there are a lot of people out there, Christina, who are struggling with whatever, with addictions, with alcoholism, with, mental and physical problems and so forth. What did you have that in mind as you share your reflections in the book?
Oh, I definitely had, the other in mind. I have no problem calling myself a cripple. I know it's not politically correct, but I am quite crippled. And in a way, we all are, because there are so many things that we can't do simply because we are limited creatures. We're creatures. By definition, we have limitations. We are within the bounds of, time and space. And there are people who become further limited by life choices, by the kind of, the people that they may hang out with, the bad influences they may have on them, and kind of get themselves boxed into a corner from which they feel like they can't escape, like they're stuck, like they're immobile, I know a little bit about that. And so all these human experiences are what we do share in common, our limitations, our pains, our sorrows, our struggles. And I always, as I said, I know them loved. And turning to love, I cannot help but think of divine love and knowing that God, all-powerful, chose to enter into those human struggles himself in the flesh. Jesus he was weak, he was helpless. In the womb, in the manger, he was dependent. And he knew fatigue and pain. He knew ridicule. And he also knew suffering, great suffering. And he willingly experienced that all of that, even, being nailed to a cross, being made immobile by cruelty and greed and fear. And he did that all for love, because there's nothing that God will let us do or allow us to suffer that he isn't willing to suffer himself. And he did that in the flesh to not only prove the profound depths of his love for us, but to really reach into every dark, deep place that we may, pit really, that we may find ourselves in, a grudge, an addiction, a pain, a suffering, a loss, and reach down in there to be intimately with us. And when we turn to him, then we have his strength to rise up from that darkness, that pit, into the light of love, in receiving his love and in giving love to others. When we stop being self-centered and we really think about the other and try to give of ourselves to the other, we, in a way, we become more than what we were before. Our hearts get bigger, our lives get bigger, our loves get bigger, because it's God who is reaching into us and living through us.
That's just beautiful, Christina. Are you still writing, or have you got another book planned? Where do you go from here?
Well, I do write weekly on my blog, authorChristinaJace.com, and I do have a couple of books in mind that I'm working on currently. One, and they're both about, being human. One is about the amazing reality of the very beginning of our human lives, those first 9 months of development in utero. And that is a book that is designed for junior high school students. And then, of course, I would like to write about my conversion and my life with disability and my finding of truth in a longer form. It is covered somewhat in It's Good to Be Here. The reflections on my own little life, alongside the reflections on the life of Christ. But to have another book that would be more of a memoir is also planned.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. Give me an idea of a day in the life. I wrote most of my books in 4-hour blocks on Saturday morning, sitting at the computer, and because everything seemed to be less confusing on Saturday morning. How do you chunk out your time? A lot of people always say they want to write a book, but very few people do, Christina. How do you go about it? What's a day in the life might look like in terms of just everyday life, and then in terms of how it fits into your beautiful writing?
Well, a lot of my daily life is taken up with survival. I need a lot of care. My parents are my main caregivers, and I also have some outside professional help that come in. Only a few hours a week, really, not that much, because my parents do everything, really. They're amazing. I love my parents. So, as I said, a lot of my day is about being able to eat and digest properly. Even just toileting takes a lot longer because I need to use a bedpan. And I'm not afraid to say that, because I think that we fear those kind of things a little too much. We think that being dependent is somehow degrading. It isn't. It's just another way of living. So I really don't have that much time to write. I compose a lot in my head. Thinking, my favorite thing to do in the whole world is think. So I will be resting on my bed because I have to lie down to rest often. And I'll just think about big questions, think about little things. And then when I'm able to sit at the computer, usually about an hour in the morning, and then another 2 hours or more if I'm pushing myself, and I probably shouldn't, in the afternoon. And that's when I do everything. Pay my bills, check up on correspondences, do research. I've taken a few online enrichment courses in theology, connect with the Catholic Writers Guild, and also write, of course. So in writing the book, the priority became writing the book. Everything else had to be on the side. So even, I think you did this too, I think. Your blog, you pre-schedule some posts for your blog. So you don't have to think about that or worry about that. The people that were used to hearing from me more often heard from me less.
But the end result ended up in, it's good to be here. We ended up in this beautiful, wonderful book. Christina, this has been a really, really enjoyable time we've spent together. I thank you so much for coming on with me here on the Storytellers. The book is published by Sophia Institute Press. It's available where all good books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your favorite local Catholic bookstore. You can find her book, A Disabled Woman's Reflection on God in the Flesh and the Sacred Wonder of Being Human. Christina, thank you so much for being with us here on the Storytellers.
Thank you very much, Tony, and God bless.
And that's our show for today. My thanks to Christina Chase for being with us. Her website, authorchristinachase.com. The program premieres at 6 p.m. Wednesday evenings on YouTube on the Fiat Ministry Network and at TonyAgnesi.com. And the radio program on the Living Bread Radio Network, Sundays at 4. That's our show. Thank you for being with us. This is Tony Agnesi. Until next time, God bless.
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Storytellers with Tony Agnesi. To learn more about today's storyteller, go to thestorytellersradio.com. There you can subscribe to the podcast and hear all of our past shows. And join us again next week at this same time for The Storytellers with Tony Agnesi.